Let's dive into today's AITA dilemmas. Story 1. Am I the AH for telling my brother's fiancé the real reason he won't let her invite her family to their wedding? My 29M brother, 32M, is engaged to his fiancée, 30F, and their wedding is in a few months. Everything was going fine until she mentioned wanting to invite her side of the family. My brother immediately shut it down, saying it would ruin the wedding. She was devastated. For context, her family is lower income, and she's the only one in her family who went to college and built a successful career. Our family is pretty well off, and my brother has always been obsessed with keeping up appearances. I thought he was just being shallow, but then I found out the real reason. A few weeks ago, at a family gathering, I overheard my brother talking to our parents. He admitted he doesn't want her family at the wedding because they're embarrassing and look like they came from a trailer park. He even joked that her dad looks like he crawled out of a Walmart clearance bin. I was disgusted. His fiancée later asked me if I knew why he was so against inviting her family. I tried to dodge the question, but she was genuinely heartbroken and kept pressing me. I finally told her the truth. She went silent, thanked me, and left. Now, everything has exploded. She confronted him, called him classist, and is considering calling off the wedding. My brother is furious and says I ruined his life by meddling. Our parents are on his side, saying I should have kept my mouth shut. I feel like she had a right to know, but now I'm wondering, am I the AH for telling her? Story 2. Am I the AH for telling my fiancé he doesn't have my back when he told a humiliating story about me in front of his entire family? A long time ago, back when low-rise jeans were popular, my boyfriend and I ran into Walmart for some things. Now, I had to get some items on the lower shelf, so I hitched my pants up as high as I could and bent down. I had to grab a few things, and I guess in that time a mother and small son came down the aisle and stood behind me. I guess that kid's face was like 12 inches from my butt crack. Guess the mom noticed and wasn't too happy. Those jeans got thrown out the next day and never bought a pair of low-rise jeans again. It's been 14 years. We were invited over to his sister's family's house for the Super Bowl. We're having a great time. And if a sudden he decides it's a great time to tell that story in front of his entire family and his sister's new husband's family, not only that, but tells it using descriptives like disgusting and made me look just about as trashy as possible, and then said that I knew it was happening and didn't care, and told him to shut up when he told me they were there, which never happened. In the car, he goes, "Are you mad?" I told him that he's demonstrated that he's someone who doesn't have their partner's back. I told him that was a betrayal. BC, he knew that story was embarrassing. He said that BC, he thinks I have no reason to be embarrassed, that he's done nothing wrong, and it's crazy of me to say he doesn't have my back. I feel like he just wanted laughs and attention, and he didn't care at all that it came at my expense. One big reason why I feel like he doesn't have my back. He decided to knowingly break the law because, again, he thought he knew better, and got arrested and spent 7 months in prison, leaving me holding a huge bag of shit and needing to do everything on my own during that time, including pay all our bills. He's been out for about a year. During that time, I bought us a house by myself. For 12 years, he didn't have his license, so I did all our driving. If I got a flat or something, I had to call my parents. My parents had my back while he was gone too. So IDK, if this is just leftover resentment from all that, or if I actually do have a legit reason to feel hurt/betrayed. I just feel like after every sacrifice I've made for us entitles me to what I would consider to be adequate treatment from him. Am I overthinking this? Story 3. Am I the AH secretly recording my coworker sabotaging me and now everyone is mad at me for exposing them? Alright, I need some perspective because this whole situation has spiraled out of control and somehow I am the bad guy. I work in a small office where most people are fine except for this one guy, Brad. Brad is that coworker. He is always loud, always knows better, and loves throwing others under the bus to make himself look good. We are both up for the same promotion, which would be fine, except he has been getting shady about it. For weeks, I have been noticing that things on my desk go missing. Important files, client notes, even random office supplies. At first, I thought I was just being forgetful, but then another coworker casually mentioned that Brad has been hanging around my desk when I am not there. Then, last week, I overheard him joking in the break room about creating opportunities for himself. That was the final straw. I decided I needed to know for sure. I set up my phone to record while I went to lunch. When I reviewed the footage, there was Brad, digging through my desk, taking one of my files, and snapping pictures of it with his phone. I did confront him directly, showing him the video, and then tried to see what he had to say. He basically incriminated himself and talked about how he did not like me. I gladly recorded all of this, and quote, I sent the footage to HR, thinking they would deal with it quietly. HR did handle it, but now everyone in the office knows, and somehow I am the one people are mad at. Some of my coworkers are saying I invaded Brad's privacy and should have talked to him instead of going to HR. Brad got written up, lost any chance of the promotion, and had to apologize to me. But now he is playing the victim, telling everyone I set him up, and saying that recording him was underhanded. Some people are even siding with him, claiming I made the office environment toxic by exposing him. I just do not get it. Brad was sabotaging me and risking my career, and I gave HR the proof they needed to stop him. I did not set him up. I caught him doing something he should not have been doing in the first place. Am I seriously in the wrong here? All I wanted was to stop someone from screwing me over. It feels like people are mad at me, just because I handled the situation instead of letting him get away with it. What else was I supposed to do? 4. Am I the AH for refusing to give up my first-class seat for a pregnant woman? So I, 28M, recently took a long-haul flight, about 10 hours. Alice Pless. I had saved up for months to splurge on a first-class ticket, something I've never done before. I was beyond excited. As I got settled in, a flight attendant approached me and asked if I would be willing to switch seats with a pregnant woman, probably in her late 30s, who was seated in economy. Apparently, she was struggling with nausea and discomfort, and her husband had asked if there was any way to move her up front. I felt bad, but I politely declined. I paid for my seat, and I wanted to enjoy the experience I had saved for. The woman's husband gave me a death glare, and another passenger nearby muttered something about me lacking empathy. The flight attendant looked disappointed but didn't push it. Halfway through the flight, I could hear the woman throwing up in a barf bag, and I started feeling guilty. But at the same time, I feel like it's not my responsibility to give up something I paid for. I'm not rich, I just really wanted this experience for once, with you. When we landed, the husband muttered, "Must be nice to have no heart." A few other passengers gave me dirty looks. Now I'm wondering, did I mess up? Am I the AH? Story 5. Am I the AH for making my sister pay back my daughter? My 42F daughter Brooke, 16, has been reading since she was 5. She has always loved books, and she would spend her allowance that we gave her on the newest book in the latest series that she was reading. It's pretty safe to say that her book collection is huge and filled with all kinds of limited edition and special edition books. Recently, she used her allowance to get a new special edition version of a book she already had because she has been saving up for it and was very excited to get it when it came out. Well, my sister Lindsay, 36, came over on Saturday with her daughter Mariah, 13, to spend time with us because it's been a while since we got to hang out and we were just catching up. Mariah started to head to Brooke's room, but I stopped her and told her that Brooke was out and she would be home in 20 minutes, so I suggested that she wait down here with us and tell me about how school was going. She talked for about 10 minutes before she said that she had to go to the bathroom. We have 2 bathrooms in our house, one upstairs and one downstairs, not including our ensuite. Unfortunately, the downstairs one is having some issues, so I told her that it was okay to use the one upstairs for now until the one downstairs is fixed. She said okay and went upstairs. While I was talking to my sister, Brooke came home, said hi, and quickly went upstairs to change. She wasn't up there for 5 minutes when I heard a loud scream and quickly ran to check on my daughter. When I got to her room, my jaw dropped when I saw several of her books, including the new special edition one, destroyed with ripped pages everywhere, and Brooke in tears at the destruction. Brooke is very non-controversial and hates arguing or fighting with people, so I stepped in for her. I told Mariah that she needs to apologize to Brooke, clean up the mess she made, and that she would no longer be welcomed in my house. I then turned to my sister and told her that she needed to reimburse Brooke for the books that her daughter destroyed. Lindsay argued with me that Mariah was just a kid and she didn't know what she was doing, but I told her that Mariah is old enough to know right from wrong, and what she did was wrong. Lindsay argued back that if my daughter didn't want her books touched, that they shouldn't have been out. I lost my cool and told her that they weren't out. They were put away in her room, where Mariah wasn't allowed to be, without Brooke's permission. Lindsay refused to pay Brooke back and called me a greedy bitch before leaving with Mariah right behind her. I told my husband about this and he was absolutely on our side, and he agreed that Lindsay needs to pay Brooke back for the books that she lost and can't replace as they were special/limited edition that she can't get back. This whole thing has really blown up, and my side of the family is telling me that I'm being too hard on Mariah, that she's just a kid, but I don't think I am. She destroyed my daughter's property, and she needs to know that her actions have consequences. So I'm asking here, was I the for demanding that my sister pay me back? ETA. I have seen some people ask, and I'm going to add a bit of information. I'm Mariah. has always had a fascination with Brooke's book collection, and last year Brooke let her borrow 2 books because Mariah said that she wanted to start reading, and since Brooke loves reading so much, she thought it was a good idea to let Mariah borrow a couple. Well, 2 weeks passed and the books came back damaged. Nothing like this, but definitely not in good condition anymore. So Brooke told her that she was not allowed to borrow her books anymore. Mariah was angry at that and yelled at my daughter, and since then Brooke has kept Mariah away from her books. My husband and I think this is what caused Mariah to do what she did to Brooke's books. Story 6. Husband states I should have just done it because he had a bad day. My husband had a stressful day. He got passed up for a promotion, but we were together all day. I talked to him in length about it, reassured him he was more than qualified and ready for the promotion, told him how he deserves it, offered him hugs multiple times, suggested he go do something he enjoys and I would take the kids. He declined my hugs and declined to go anywhere. He was on and off the phone most of the day. I didn't ask him to do anything with the house and kids, except I had a migraine and needed to lay down till meds kicked in, which was 30 minutes. I knew he was stressed, so I just let him be. End of the day, I'm exhausted. I expressed this to him and we went to bed. I said goodnight and he said, "Aren't we going to have sex?" I said no, I was exhausted. He said, "Okay, well can you play with me?" I said I really wasn't in the mood and again exhausted. He turned over and just said, "Okay, make." Mind you, we have had sex 3 times in the last 2 days. He eventually says in a nasty tone, "You know I had a stressful day. I thought this was the least you could do for me. Even if you're not in the mood or don't want to, I figured you would realize I needed this stress relief and do it anyway. It's always your needs over mine." Turned into a huge argument. He said, "You're portraying me to be some kind of rapist," but then later goes on to repeat himself and say, "As my wife, you should want to do something that would make me happy." I see his point of view that marriage is about sacrificing your own needs sometimes. Could I have just done what he asked from the beginning? Sure, but I was honestly cringing at the idea of doing something I wasn't into. And would it be enjoyable if that's the case? Probably not. Am I just seeing this differently because it's sex-related and my husband is right to think this way? How would you feel/respond? Story 7. Am I the AH for refusing to give or loan money to my stepsister for college? My parents divorced when I, 25, was 6. My dad remarried when I was 11. My stepmom had 2 kids before she married my dad. Jace was already an adult and out of the house. Emmy was 9. Jace was closer with his dad than he was to my stepmom, while Emmy only ever had my stepmom. She was like an excited puppy when my dad and stepmom met. She was really into me, and she was looking for us to be super close. It was a little much and she hated when I'd be at my mom's house, and tried to get invited over pretty often. My dad got me a lock so I could protect my bedroom at his house when I was with mom. I was 50-50 with my parents, so I'd be gone for a week at a time, which seemed risky to have an overexcited kid who wasn't happy about me being gone, having access while I wasn't there. I did tolerate the overexcited parts of Emmy, because we got along mostly fine when my stepmom stepped in and reminded Emmy she didn't get to have my attention 24/7. But a couple of years after my dad and stepmom got married, things went south. I was sick and couldn't get out of bed, and Emmy was told to leave me alone, but she didn't. And when she tried to make me get up and play with her, I snapped and told her to leave me alone, and she cried and told me I was the worst sister, and why did I never want to hang out with her? My stepmom came and pulled her out of the room. When I was better, my dad and stepmom did a sit-down talk for the 4 of us, and they told Emmy she was wrong to bother me when I was sick. She ignored them and said she wants to hang out with me and be best friends, but I only want her around sometimes. I told her I have my own life, and I don't want her attached to my side all the time. She cried, and my stepmom talked to her more about respecting her space, but she decided if I wouldn't be her sister like she wanted, then she was mad at me. I stopped making any effort to spend time with her and focused on my friends. Emmy hated me for it, but I never loved spending time with her. I was mostly being nice, but I didn't want the needy energy around all the time. In retaliation for it, she trashed my room a year and a half later. She broke my school laptop, my cell phone, several photos, tore up a few of my books, and tore the stuffy that my late aunt bought for me. I refused to stay at my dad's 50% after that. I still saw him, but I wanted to be as far from Emmy as possible. I have been really low contact with her since. When I was in my senior year of high school, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and she died on my 18th birthday. I inherited a really healthy amount from her, and a house that I sold, as per mom's instructions, and found a place to call my own. I haven't really spent much of the money, maybe like $500 in 2 years, and that was to help while I struggled with the money from my job, and I was figuring out what I wanted. My dad knew about the money but not the exact amount. Same with my stepmom. They still don't know how much I have. Emmy's graduating this summer and she plans to attend college. She's not going to be eligible for any scholarships, and my dad and stepmom don't have much money to help her. My stepmom wanted me to give Emmy some money for college as a gift to help her out. I shut that idea down immediately and told her I wasn't about to give Emmy free money. I told her we might have been kids when everything happened, but I wasn't about to forget everything that happened either and reward her for it. My stepmom said I should work on bettering my relationship with Emmy, and she still wanted a sister. Then she suggested I loan her some money so she'd have less student loans for college. She mentioned that to Emmy too, and Emmy sent me this plan of how much I could give and when she could start paying it back. I shut that down too and said it wouldn't happen. I also blocked Emmy. My stepmom pushed the issue and I told Dad. He asked if there was any way I'd reconsider and I said no. He said he'd talk to them, but my stepmom is still bugging me about it. She told me I should help my sister in all this. I bit back a retort of, Emmy isn't my sister, but I typically get along with my stepmom, so I was trying to be less mean about that. But she was really angry. I wouldn't consider either option, not even when she offered to pay for the legal fees to obligate Emmy to pay me back. Am I the AH? Story 8. Am I the AH for refusing to babysit my half-siblings and telling my dad I'm not his backup mom? Hi Reddit. I, 19F, think I might have gone too far, but I need some outside perspective. For context, my parents divorced when I was 12 because my dad cheated on my mom with a younger woman, Emily, now 31F. It was a messy, ugly divorce, and my relationship with my dad has been strained ever since. He married Emily pretty quickly, and they now have 3 kids under 5. Ever since the kids were born, he's been constantly asking me to help out with babysitting. I live with my mom and go to college full-time while working part-time to cover my expenses. Despite that, my dad calls me almost every week, begging me to come over and bond with my siblings by babysitting. He says Emily is overwhelmed and needs a break. I honestly don't care. I never wanted siblings, and I'm still not over the fact that his affair blew up our family. I've told him I'm busy with school and work, but he keeps guilt-tripping me, saying things like, family takes care of family. Last weekend, he called again, practically demanding I babysit because Emily had a mental breakdown. I lost it. I told him, I'm not your backup mom. You chose to have more kids, and that's not my responsibility. He got quiet and then said, I thought you were more mature than this, before hanging up on me. Now, both he and Emily have been sending me messages, calling me selfish, and saying that I'm abandoning my family. My grandma even chimed in, saying I should help my father in his time of need. But I feel like he's just trying to dump his problems on me because he made bad choices. My mom thinks I did the right thing, but now half my family is pissed at me. Am I the AH for refusing to help and saying what I did? Story 9. Am I the AH for arguing my mother-in-law in behalf of my partner? I never thought I'd be the one beefing with my mother-in-law, but here we are. My partner and I have been together for a while, and their mom has never really liked me. She's always made little passive-aggressive comments, but my partner usually brushes them off to keep the peace. The other night, though, she took it too far. She started criticizing my partner's life choices right in front of me. Stuff like their career, how they handle money, and even their appearance. My partner just sat there, clearly uncomfortable, but trying to keep quiet. I couldn't take it anymore and jumped in, calling her out for constantly putting them down. I told her she had no right to treat them like that and that she should be more supportive instead of always judging. She did not take that well. She got defensive, saying she was just trying to help and that I was being disrespectful for talking to her that way. My partner didn't say much, just asked us both to calm down, but later thanked me for standing up for them. Now, my mother-in-law is acting like I ruined the whole relationship between them, and I feel like I might have overstepped. I don't regret defending my partner, but I don't know if I should have handled it differently. Am I the AH? Story 10. Am I the AH for cutting a friend of 17 years off for a guy? I know the title sounds bad, but I didn't think I was the AH until mentioning the situation to a different friend who said what I did wasn't very nice. So basically, me and my friend had been friends for 17 years, practically inseparable for 7. We stayed that close even when we both had partners and both became single again. She used to confide in me with literally everything about everything: her sex life, her relationship, the arguments her and her ex were having, the arguments she thought would happen, things he was doing that were annoying her. All this to say we were really close. We skip ahead a bit, and I've met my now boyfriend, and we were getting pretty serious. I decided I wanted him to meet her, though he already had his opinions on her from things I'd told him about. We walked to a public park near her house and invited her to come down. She started taking a long time. She lived literally 1 road away. She crosses it, she's at the park. And I joked she was getting changed to show me up. She came down in a PJ set but had changed the top to a crop top. A little weird, but never mind. I introduced them and they began awkwardly talking, until she asks who of my friends he had met. I tried to tell him not to answer. She didn't have any other friends besides me. I sound insensitive, but it's genuinely factual. He answers the only name he can remember, which is a friend's friend, we're not too close, who was at my party. My friend planned something switches in her, and she starts saying horrible things to my partner. I was actually stunned. It rendered me speechless while I was trying to process what was going on. I kept telling her to stop. After I realized I can't stay silent while this is happening. She's ignoring me, so I'm standing up and trying to get in the way of her vile behavior. My partner turns to me and says, "Can we leave? This girl is jarring." And I just nod and we leave. Then my friend does this thing where she storms off crying and, genuinely, waits for me to run after her. I used to every time in the past. 2 days later, I get a paragraph from her saying I'm an awful person for letting him say that, and agreeing and leaving her there, and that she can't believe I'm throwing our friendship away for some guy. I had previously been talking to her about how great he is and how genuinely happy he makes me. All things suggested she was happy for me. I had time to sit on the situation, and it just made me angrier, and I was very blunt in my message back. I might be a bit of an AH for that, but I think it was justified by this point in time. The reason I'm thinking about it now, months later, is because she started randomly sending me photos of things in her room that we did together 6+ years ago. Lists, sleepover plans, you get the idea. And it makes me feel awful for not really missing her anymore. The first week of no contact I did. But I knew that was the end of our friendship pretty quickly, as why would I disrespect my partner by hanging out with someone with those views of him? But IDK, so Reddit, sorry for my yap, but am I the AH? Story 11. Am I the AH for not believing my partner when he said he feels unloved when he is not wearing a hat? So this is one of those situations where I genuinely don't know if I'm the asshole or if my partner is just being dramatic. First, for context, my boyfriend, M29, has been weirdly attached to hats his whole life. Like, he wears them everywhere, inside, outside, at fancy dinners, you name it. I, F27, always thought it was just a style thing. And honestly, I never questioned it. But recently, he started opening up about how insecure he feels about his hairline. It's thinning, and apparently, it's been bothering him for years. Here's where the argument comes in. The other day, we were getting ready to go to a family event, and he couldn't find his favorite hat. He started panicking, like full-on tearing the apartment apart looking for it. I thought it was kind of funny at first and joked, "It's just a hat. You'll survive." He stopped and gave me this dead serious look and said, "When I'm not wearing a hat, I feel completely exposed. It makes me feel like you don't love me enough to care about how I feel." I froze because what? I didn't even know how to respond. I told him he was overthinking it and that I obviously love him, with or without a hat, but he got really upset and said I was dismissing his feelings and making him feel stupid for being vulnerable. He ended up canceling on the event altogether, and we haven't really talked about it since. Now I feel like crap because I didn't mean to make him feel unloved, but at the same time, I don't know how to navigate this without enabling what feels like a weird dependency on hats. Like, is it really my responsibility to tiptoe around this? Or was I wrong for brushing it off? Edit. Thank you so much for the amazing answers. I just decided to have a sit down with him, and we have decided that the healthiest thing to do would be to try and fight the hair loss. I mean, it is controllable to some degree with modern medicine, so yeah, he is still being very, very timid about the situation. But we set up an appointment with a dermatologist and have been testing out a bunch of viral remedies and products, the HairSnap app, to try and find a good place to start. Am I the AH for occasionally falling asleep in my daughter's room at bedtime? Hi Reddit, I could really use your input on a situation I'm facing now. My 7-year-old daughter struggles with severe separation anxiety, especially after weekends with her mom, so she likes having me lay down with her to help her fall asleep. Sometimes, I end up dozing off in her room for a few hours, and usually wake up around 1 to 2 a.m. to return to my own bed. However, this has caused some tension with my girlfriend. She's upset because she believes I wake her when I come back to our room, and she thinks it's better if I simply stay in my daughter's bed for the whole night. While I understand where she's coming from, I also feel it's important for me to be there for my daughter during bedtime. I can tell my girlfriend gets frustrated. I've noticed when I tell her I'm going to lay down with my daughter, I can hear sighing and slamming doors and cabinets when we are laying down. So Reddit, am I being unreasonable for occasionally falling asleep in my daughter's room? I'd appreciate your thoughts. Story 13. Am I the AH for not giving my dad a copy of my mom's death certificate? Okay, so I'm fairly new to Reddit, and I'm not very good at telling long stories, so I apologize in advance if this drags out more than it should. I'm a 38-year-old female, and the youngest from my mom, my dad's 69, and my mom's 64. So I'm going to rewind back to when my parents were together. They were married by court and by Catholic Church for about 20 years, and throughout the marriage they constantly argued and my dad cheated a lot. They split when I was 15, and the divorce was settled on my 18th birthday. After everything was done, my siblings and I, learned my dad had a mistress during the last 5 years of their marriage, who we will call Mistress. The year they split up, my mom caught my dad with his mistress outside of his workplace. My mom was pissed and heartbroken. She kicked out my dad, and he went to live with his sister. I believe at that time my mom wanted to work it out with him, but she needed her space. Almost immediately after staying with my aunt, my dad moved in with his mistress and told mom it was BC she needed help. My mom filed for divorce. That same year, he got his mistress pregnant with my now half-sister. Throughout the years following, he would be in and out of our lives and occasionally would bring my baby sister around, but there was always a distance. In December 2023, he told us that he wanted to marry his mistress by church and needed my mom to give him a copy of the divorce papers or sign a declaration of nullity document, which my mom refused to do both. She wasn't happy about it, and I know it bothered her until the day she died. I believe everything that happened with my dad had a partial tabret on her health. She couldn't fully move on. Especially BC. He stood with the same woman that she said took everything away from me. She struggled with type 1 diabetes for almost all her life and had her leg amputated in November 2024 BC of an infection she caught. Since then, her health declined. She came home January 11th with at-home hospice care and passed away January 15th of this year. We had her wake's funeral on January 26th. Now to the issue with my dad. He asked the day of the funeral for a copy of my mom's death certificate, and every week after kept asking for it. Seems like he was more concerned with obtaining the certificate after my mom's funeral than asking if we were okay or if we needed anything. He called me asking again about it, and I just told him straight up that he's asking too soon for it and that it hasn't even been a month. We argued, and he kept saying how he needed it for his records, and I told him we are not stupid and we know it's BC. He needs it to get married by church. He also told me that it isn't fair to him that we are refusing to give him the copy. My brother ended calling him and they argued, and it pretty much ended with my dad telling my brother for us to have a good life. So now I feel like I lost two parents over something that could have waited a few months if he had just given us time. And don't get me wrong, I am okay with my dad getting remarried, even if it's to his mistress. I love my dad. I wanted to keep a relationship with him for the sake of my kids and myself. But the fact he's kind of overlooking that we need his support right now, it's hurting. I feel bad, but also very angry at him. So Aklita for not giving him the copy? Story 14. Am I the AH for asking my sister-in-law to apologize for trying to sleep with her brother-in-law? So Eric, brother-in-law 30 meters, and John, BF 25 meters, lived together, and Eric's girlfriend moved in. Eric decided to take their mother to Paris, leaving John and Tammy, 29F, at home. Tammy and John went to a local bar, started drinking, and asking truth or dare questions. Tammy asked John if he liked her. He said, "When we were younger before, I understood that you were my brother's girlfriend." John asked Tammy the same question, and Tammy admitted she liked him. Now then, John went to the restroom, and while he was in there, she went in to use the restroom as well. In the same one person. They took a video of each other peeing. Now a year has gone by since I've talked to her, and during the Super Bowl, one asked her multiple times to respectfully leave me alone in a very calm manner, and she did not. When I told her I expect an apology from her, she got upset and made everybody leave. So am I the AH for ruining their Super Bowl and night out at the bar? Story 15. Am I the AH for ending a 10-year friendship due to being psychoanalyzed with ChatGPT? It started in June when my friend invited me to Cyprus last minute as a replacement for his ex-girlfriend. Otherwise, he would have had to cancel the trip. I hesitated but agreed, on the condition that he would come with me to Glastonbury, which he accepted. Fast forward 2 weeks, and we arrive in Cyprus. What I had hoped would be a relaxing break from work quickly turned into a series of grief-fueled side quests, like club hopping, so he could meet new people. I had no issue with that until he started pushing my boundaries, persistently urging me to try laughing gas, nitrous oxide, and dragging me to the dance floor to Pitbull's music. I couldn't do it. Given the context of this trip, the itinerary was tailored to his ex-girlfriend. My presence could only serve as a placeholder, yet all it did was remind him of her absence. And honestly, I can't blame him. Their relationship had ended just 2 weeks before, and he had zero time or space to properly process it. I was upfront about my frustrations, both with his behavior and with being pressured into half-board food options that weren't halal. But instead of acknowledging any of it, he brushed it off as me sulking and being ungrateful. On the topic of dietary restrictions, I had informed the hotel receptionist, who actually agreed to issue a partial refund for the half-board. However, when the travel agency reviewed our dispute, they refused to process it. Since my friend had witnessed the receptionist agreeing to the refund, I asked him to file a chargeback. He claimed he couldn't because his virtual debit card had expired, and this really pissed me off. A week later, the Cyprus trip came to an end, and we returned to our regular lives. Now, this is where I would say the decline of our friendship happens. In late October, when I mentioned that Glastonbury tickets were going on sale, he said it wasn't for him. And after that, I decided to go AWOL. My lack of response was followed by 2 weeks of texts, missed call notifications, and voicemails, along with attempts to reach out to other friends to check in on me. He did this because of my history with depression, but his intentions weren't genuine. Even after receiving confirmation from my friends that I was okay, he threatened to involve my workplace to initiate a wellness check. I was given no choice but to respond. I expressed my grievances about him backing out of Glastonbury so close to the tickets being on sale, and he explained that he hadn't enjoyed my company during the Cyprus trip and dreaded the idea of spending 5 days with me at the festival. He also claimed that I had only come to Cyprus out of pity, rather than to enjoy being in his company. I acknowledged and understood his perspective, but it's important to note that the trip was originally planned by him and his ex. It wasn't a destination we chose together, and it was arranged pretty last minute. Throughout the trip, his ex remained a recurring topic of conversation. I brought this point up in response, and to his credit, he understood where I was coming from. At that moment, he was just pissed off that I was withholding communication for 2 weeks. The texting back and forth became exhausting, and I felt there was no real resolution to be found, as I still wouldn't be able to go to Glastonbury. It was an emotionally intense moment, and in the heat of it, I sent a voice note saying I no longer wanted to be friends. In response to my voice note, he distilled our conversation into ChatGPT, setting criteria and ranking for emotionality, victim mindset, rationality, and conflict handling. My reaction was intense, and someone with Asperger's syndrome, autism, I haven't received personalized support since I was a kid, so for him to engage in this pseudo-psychoanalysis was hurtful to say the least. We hopped on a phone call, where, admittedly, I greeted him in a confrontational manner. I composed myself shortly after. He said he wouldn't engage with me on this call if I continue raising my voice. The call consisted of him being dismissive over the Glastonbury agreement and gaslighting me into believing the ChatGPT thing was a productive step into understanding each other better, only for him to show where he adopted the criteria of conflict handling, emotionality, rationality, and victim mindset stemmed from a Twitter post of someone using that exact same framework on a girl. Nearing the end of our call, he suggested I reconsider my decision to end the friendship. It took a day for me to respond, and by then, I didn't have the emotional capacity to ask him to take accountability, as this discourse dragged on for a week. Honestly, I offered him forgiveness, as I wasn't in a place to withstand losing someone I once considered close. We're reaching the point in this thread where I take back my forgiveness and end the friendship. While hospitalized for breathing difficulties, and when I was on heavy medication, I experienced a breakthrough. I came to the realization that I struggled with how I perceived myself. His ChatGPT tactic, along with his half-assed apology, only further invalidated my feelings. It was a difficult compromise to make. After I got out of hospital, I sent an emotionally charged voice note rescinding my forgiveness and stating I initially forgave him on the mercy of us being friends for 10 years. He opened the voice note and to some degree acknowledged that his actions were hurtful and requested we schedule a call once we've processed everything. It took him 2 weeks to follow up on the call he proposed, only to say he wasn't interested in talking on the phone and that he needed space. Part of me feels I should have communicated back in October about needing space, but honestly, I lost all my patience and ended up telling him to F off. Story 16. Am I the AH for telling my brother it's his own fault? So I, 27M, have a younger brother, Jonas, 24M, who has never really faced consequences for his actions. Our parents always bailed him out, no matter what he did. Now, years later, it's catching up to him, and I might not have reacted very sympathetically. Jonas has a girlfriend, Lisa, 23F, who he's been with for 3 years. She's a great person, smart, kind, but also someone who doesn't take crap from anyone. I always liked her and thought they were a good match, until a few weeks ago. I had noticed before that Jonas wasn't always completely honest. He had a habit of twisting the truth to make himself look better, and sometimes he straight up lied. Nothing extreme, but little things. Calling in sick to work when he just wanted a lazy day, exaggerating stories to make himself the hero, or blaming others when he messed up. Then, 2 weeks ago, Lisa called me. She was clearly upset and asked me if I knew anything about Jonas borrowing money from people. I was confused because, as far as I knew, Jonas wasn't struggling financially. She told me he had asked her for 500 euros, saying he needed it for car repairs. That wasn't unusual. His car was old, but then she found out he had asked one of their mutual friends for money for the same reason. Lisa confronted him, and he got defensive, then admitted he had been gambling online. He had lost way more money than he could afford and was desperate to cover it up. She was furious, not just because of the money, but because he had lied to her repeatedly. When I saw Jonas a few days later, he was miserable. Lisa had broken up with him, and some of his friends had cut him off. He complained to me about how unfair it was, how Lisa overreacted, and how everyone was abandoning him over one mistake. That's when I lost my patience. I told him it wasn't just one mistake. It was years of lying, blaming others, and never taking responsibility. I said Lisa should leave him because she deserves better, and if his friends don't trust him anymore, that's his fault, not theirs. Jonas got really quiet and then just walked away. Later, my mom called me, furious. She said Jonas was devastated and that I should have been supportive instead of kicking him while he's down. She thinks I should apologize, but I don't see why. 17. Am I the AH for being upset at my mom for accidentally poisoning my dog? My girlfriend and I live with my parents. On Friday night we were making dinner. My mom was in the living room watching TV, and my dog was there with her. My mom suddenly tells us that root beer ate gum off the floor. My understanding of what had happened is that my mom spilled gum on the floor, didn't realize how much gum was spilled on the floor. She knew that she spilled gum on the floor, but she didn't get off the couch to pick it up or pick it all up. When she realized that my dog had been eating the gum and told us, I exclaimed, "Son of a bitch, Mom!" And when we went to the spot where he had been eating the gum off the floor, it looked like there were around 10 pieces of gum on the floor, and we don't know how many that my dog could have eaten. My girlfriend and I are panicking because sugar-free gum with xylitol in it, is not good at all for dogs. We smelled his breath and it was very minty. It never is. And I feel like it was right for us to panic/become concerned with what happened. I started trying to give my dog vinegar to see if that could make him throw up, and it didn't. My girlfriend asked my mom if she knew how many pieces of gum she had from that container, and how many were on the floor so we could guess how many that the dog could have eaten. My mom didn't know and told us that he might have had at least one. I'm not sure how that exchange went because it happened quick, but I told her that one is enough to kill him. I don't remember pointing any more blame at my mom aside from that, or saying anything to her about the mess she left on the floor. Since my dog wasn't throwing up and we knew that he might have had at least one, we decided to take him to the emergency vet. My dog never showed symptoms of xylitol poisoning on our way there. Now, I think it could have been because he had already eaten dinner and his food helped buffer the xylitol. Back at the vet, they were able to induce vomiting and said that he did have a lot of gum in his stomach, but they couldn't tell how much exactly. But it could have been more than one piece. There was 1 gram of xylitol per piece of gum, which was considered dangerous, and when I had looked it up later, 630 milligrams of xylitol could have been harmful to my dog because of how small he is. When I was at the vet, my dad called me asking what was going on, told me that my dog was probably fine, and said that he didn't know what was going on. But my mom came to him crying after we had left because my girlfriend and I made her feel like it was her fault about what happened. My dad said it was an accident, and that we should apologize to my mom for making her feel like it was her fault. This is what makes me mad. I understand that we reacted strongly, but we were panicking over our dog. We weren't pointing fingers at her or directly telling her that it was her fault, but it was her mistake. Our concern was over the dog, and not over who did it when that happened. I understand it was a mistake, but it was careless, because she did not clean up after herself, knowing that there is a dog in the house that would eat anything, especially from her because she shares with the dogs a lot. The vet wanted to hospitalize my dog, but we couldn't afford it, so we had to take him home and monitor him there, and give him medications. For the last couple days, he has been acting perfectly fine, a little tired, but I fear that wouldn't have been the case if we didn't react so quickly and take him to the vet to make him throw it up. When we got home, neither of my parents were concerned with what happened or asked if my dog was okay. Next morning, I even still apologized to my mom for how we reacted, but we were concerned for our dog. She was rude and didn't want to listen to me. She was making a cake for my grandma and told me, "I can't hear you," pointing that she wasn't wearing her hearing aids, and kept working without looking at me. I asked her to stop for a second so I could apologize. She did pause, and I said I'm sorry for how we reacted and we were panicking over what had happened to our dog. She only said okay, not really accepting the apology, and she didn't ask at all about what happened. Neither has my dad asked about what happened. I know my parents, and I know that they're thinking that we made a bigger deal about it than they think it should have been, My parents and I have not been talking for the past 3 days. I've only said good morning or hello. Both my parents also ignore my dog now, or push him away when he tries to greet them. It upsets me that my mom victimized herself in that situation, or my dog didn't know any better. Growing up, my mom has never apologized to me or my brothers for anything, but if we ever made mistakes, they were still always our fault, and we had to apologize for it, even if we didn't do anything. Both my older brothers have since moved out and keep both my parents at a distance. We are all adults now. I'm the youngest at 23, and my parents are in their mid-50s. I recall a memory my mom told me when she was younger. She was driving through a neighborhood. A dog ran out from a yard and she hit and killed it. She said she felt extreme remorse for that because it's like hitting a kid, that they don't know any better. Despite this, she cannot show the same compassion towards me or my dog for what happened. I can't help but think if it was actually my kid that had been poisoned, would they be expecting me to apologize for that too? My girlfriend and I had already been planning on moving out of the house in the spring so that we can have our own space and feel more comfortable, but since this has occurred, we are speeding up the process and plan on moving out within the next couple weeks. I won't tell my parents that I am leaving until we have signed for a place. My mom has already been charging me rent, so why not pay more for a place where I'd actually be happy? This is also not the first time that my mom has accidentally endangered my dog. Less than a month ago, my mom left the gate to the yard open, and when we had let our dog outside at night around 9 p.m. to go pee, he had left the yard, and we didn't notice until my girlfriend realized that he was taking too long to ask to be let back in. Luckily, when we had ran outside, he was only in the neighbor's yard, peeing on their bushes. The area we live in is mostly undeveloped, and commonly has coyotes out at night where dogs from the neighborhood often go missing in the trails. When walking the trails during the day, it is easy to find bones or carcasses of dogs and other animals that the coyotes have eaten. My mom did apologize for this, but did not feel like the situation was so serious, despite how distraught my girlfriend was.
Story 18. Am I the off for refusing to let my fiance's parents walk her down the aisle after what they did? My 29M fiance, 27F, and I are getting married in a few months. She has always had a complicated relationship with her parents, especially her father, who was very controlling when she was younger. He constantly belittled her choices, from her career to her friends, and even tried to sabotage our relationship in the early years because I wasn't good enough for their family. A few years ago, her parents disowned her after she refused to break up with me. They told her she was dead to them and blocked her everywhere. It was brutal, she was devastated, but we moved forward and built a life together. Fast forward to now. They suddenly reached out, acting like nothing happened, after hearing about the wedding through mutual family. They said they assumed she would want her father to walk her down the aisle, and my fiancé, being the kind-hearted person she is considering it because he's still my dad. I, however, am not okay with this. I reminded her how they treated her, how they threw her away when she needed them most, and now they just get to show up like the perfect parents for a big, emotional moment? I told her I don't want them at the wedding, period. She thinks I'm making it harder than it needs to be and that it's her decision to make. Her parents, of course, are acting like I'm the bad guy now, saying I'm trying to ruin their reconciliation and taking their daughter away from them. So, am I the off for putting my foot down? Story 19. Am I the off for not adding my stepmom's extended family to my wedding guest list? I, 26F, will be getting married next year. My fiancé and I are paying for the wedding ourselves with no help from anyone. This includes my dad and stepmom and my maternal side, who are all invited and a big part of my life. With that out of the way, I want to know if I'm wrong here. My dad and stepmom got married when I was 10, which was 2 years after my mom died. It wasn't long after their wedding my stepmom's family got annoyed on my stepmom's behalf that she wasn't treated like a member of my mom's family and for calling her my stepmom instead of my mom. They felt my stepmom deserved more respect from my mom's family. Even though my mom's family didn't have an issue with any of them at that point. They just called her what she is, my stepmom. Things got really bad when my dad threw me a sweet 16. He didn't want to invite mom's family because he said it would make my stepmom and her family uncomfortable. I asked who the party was for and said they didn't have to come if they had an issue with my family being there. My stepmom told her family and they put all the blame on my mom's family. And they were acting so offended that I would prefer to have my actual family there versus people who were sort of family but never really felt like my family. There's a really good chance having everyone at the wedding would lead to attempts at fights. But even without that, I really don't have a connection to my stepmom's family. I don't hate them, but I don't see them as my third family either. My stepmom is close to her family though and wants them at the wedding. For me, it's less of a headache not to invite them, and it also feels less greedy. Like inviting people I would quickly lose touch with if my dad divorced or died and who I don't care for personally seems so greedy and like a gift grab. I put my foot down and said no to adding them to the guest list, which upset my stepmom. My dad offered to pay 100% of the cost for stepmom's extended family. He told me it means they're sorta his guests instead of mine, but they're still there. I asked him if he'd keep them on a short leash so they don't start fights. I also asked if he'd make it clear they wouldn't be in family photos. He admitted they would need to be included to stop hurt feelings and more trouble, and he said he can't control adults, so I told him my no was still solid. My dad and stepmom think I'm being a bridezilla about this. Am I? Story 20. Am I the off for not letting my friends use my backyard for their wedding because they do not want me to bring a +1? Here is the situation. Last summer, I bought my grandparents' house. This house was the hangout spot for my friends and I throughout our childhood. This includes my friend, Dave. The house has a sizable amount of land, which includes a lake and a gazebo. I was supposed to buy the house with my now ex-girlfriend, Leslie. But going through the process of getting approved to buy, I found out that she has massive amounts of credit card and personal debt that she hid from me throughout our 4 years together. I decided to break up as a result. That was about 6 months ago. I met Leslie because Dave's long-term girlfriend, Kim, is Leslie's cousin. Dave and Kim are engaged and set to get married in April. When I was buying the house, they asked if they could have the ceremony at the gazebo, which I agreed to do. In December, I started dating again. Leslie has not taken this well at all. She thinks we are going to get back together and has tried multiple times to make that happen. I have told her in no uncertain terms that isn't happening. Dave and Kim have asked me to not bring a +1 to the wedding for Leslie's sake. I have told them that this request is ridiculous. This wedding is happening at my house, using my land, and I am not allowed to bring a date because of a crazy ex. If that is the case, then they need to find a new venue for the wedding. They are pissed about this given the short time frame of when the wedding is supposed to happen. So, we are at an impasse. Am I the awe? Story 21. Am I the awe for pretending to think beans in chili are woke, to prank my cousin who is obsessed with being anti-woke, and who loves chili? My cousin is known for making chili. And he's good at it. He makes his own chili flakes from his secret combination of various dried chilies. It has a very nice kick. It's like the perfect amount of spice. It's hot but not too hot. He also always adds kidney beans. Not canned beans either. Anyways, for the past 2 or 3 years my cousin has become obsessed with all this bullshit about what is or isn't woke, and how woke things are the end of the world. He's always been a good dude, so I don't know what his bag is, but he is completely obsessed. It's annoying. So the other weekend I was at his place and he was making his famous chili. So I got the idea for a little prank. I was like, I'm surprised you still put beans in your chili. He was like, what? Why? I was like, beans in chili are so woke. Everyone is saying so. He was like, what do you mean? And he was like genuinely concerned. As if this was something serious. I said something like, yeah, beans in chili are woke. The original conservative Texans who made chili only used meat in chili. San Francisco liberals started adding beans to chili in the 60s because so many hippies were vegetarian. Now all the woke scientists are saying beans are a better protein source than meat. He didn't say anything to that. I kind of just assumed he'd know I was fucking with him and get the joke. We have always fucked around with each other and jokes about and all. But he was quiet all dinner. Just yesterday I was back again at his place and he was making his chili again. There were no beans. It was a totally different chili. This guy has been making his chili with beans for like 15 years. I was like, what's up? Where's the beans? He was like, I don't fuck with that woke shit. I was like, what? He was like, beans in chili are woke. Even you know that. Everyone else was like, what? Because, what? I was like, dude, I was just fucking with you. He got really angry. He dumped his chili in the sink and told everyone to go home. I thought he was pranking me back or something, but he was serious. The dude totally lost it. He texted me later and said this exact thing. I researched this online and it turns out you really were lying to me. Beans are not woke. How could you do this? We went back and forth for a bit. His position is even though we have historically pranked each other, I went too far. That I betrayed him. That I made him question his chili. I tried to ask him if this at all made him think he cared too much about woke. Like what if beans in chili was woke, so what? He ignored that and demanded I apologize. Did I take this too far? Story 22. Am I the bad one here? A few weeks before Christmas, my parents asked me what shoes I wanted to buy. I bought them, and only now, a month after the purchase, did they inform me that they used my money to pay for it. They didn't tell me beforehand that they were going to use my money, and now that I need it, it's gone. They keep telling me how much they spend on me and how fast I spend money, yet I've only spent about $100 on personal or leisure items in the past 6 months, excluding essentials like school-related expenses. My dad recently bought me a bike, which I was already saving up for, and now he's asking me to pay for it with the money I got from selling my old phone, which also went to my mom. My mom borrowed the money and hasn't returned it because, as she put it, my dad bought you a bike. So this has happened twice now. I feel terrible because, had I kept that money, I'd have around $300 to $400 right now. I know that might not sound like much to some of you, but as a teen, that's a significant amount for me. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, I have a relative who owes my mom money, and now my mom is using my phone as collateral since the relative hasn't paid yet. But this phone was supposed to be a gift for me. Now they're calling me mukhang pera, materialistic, and saying I'm worthless for asking for my money back. What should I do? Story 23. Am I the off for deliberately pretending to forget my dad's birthday and leaving him to spend it alone? Throwaway because way too many of my friends are on Reddit. My 44F, dad, 73M, has never remembered my birthday. It was slightly covered up when I was a child because my mom always remembered. But a couple of times when she wasn't around, it fell to him and he totally failed. So, for example, I got nothing on my 18th birthday because my mom was away for 3 months. My sister, 46F, had a party with friends, a new dress and lovely gifts when she turned 18. Every year it's the same. My 2 siblings, I also have a much younger brother, 33M, aren't great at this kind of thing. But I always remind them it's dad's birthday so they can send him a card and call. Since my mom died a decade ago, I usually take him out to dinner and give him a gift so he's not alone. A couple of times I've thrown him a surprise party, and for his 70th I threw a big event where his extended family flew in. I always point out to him when he has forgotten mine. I've told him I find it very hurtful. He just shakes it off and says it isn't important, even though I just told him it was important to me. And then he forgets it again. Every year. This year at Christmas he was talking about something relevant, so I took the opportunity to tell him that he needs to make the effort. Then I asked him when I was born. He couldn't even come up with the year. He mocked me for being sensitive, and inside I just let it all go. He has a phenomenal memory. It's ludicrous that he won't do this for me. I don't even want a gift, though I won't lie, it would be nice. Just a happy birthday call or a card. Well, his 73rd birthday just rolled round. I didn't remind my siblings about it so they both forgot. He rang me the day before. I knew why, but I chatted about random things and then said I had to run and quickly ended the call. On his birthday, I turned off my phone and went out. He rang me the next day and said that no one remembered his birthday, not even a card or a phone call, and he spent it alone. I guarantee that's a first. I told him he had made it abundantly clear that birthdays were not important and that he was reaping what he'd sowed. He grumpily agreed with me, but he's still mad. I'm sorry his feeling got hurt, because I do love him, but I think this is the way it's going to be from now on. Unless he steps up and gets me flowers, a kitten and some Turkish delight for my 45th, in which case we're all good. Just FYI. I don't neglect him. I order his groceries every week and bring him round to dinner every Monday. And this is a blind spot for him. He's honestly a nice man, and can be very generous when it occurs to him. Story 24. Am I the off for laughing when I saw my newborn niece and she's black? Controversial title, I know, but listen. I, 21M, have a brother, 32M, who's married to my soon-to-be ex-sil, 27F. I'm Korean American, and my grandfather still has our family genealogy that dates back to our great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents, all of whom were Korean. Meanwhile, my sil and her family that I've met are all white. I'm currently in college, so I wasn't home much, but of course, I took a trip back home when my brother said his wife was in labor. I got there after my niece was born, and when I arrived, my parents and their in-laws were outside the room. The situation was very tense. So, my dumbass, trying to lighten the mood, barged into the room with a, "Ta-da. Best uncle is here. Where's my niece?" kind of entrance. My brother wasn't in the room like I expected him to, but then I saw a very beautiful baby who looked nothing like either my brother or his wife. Her skin was visibly darker, and her features were definitely not like those of a white or Asian baby. She didn't even look mixed, but she was adorable. I was stunned, flabbergasted, and so dumbfounded that I could only let out a laugh before apologizing and awkwardly excusing myself from the room. For the record, I wasn't laughing at the baby but at the situation I realized after seeing her. I know genetic mutations exist, but that only crossed my mind after I managed to process the situation. They did a DNA test, and, sure enough, the baby isn't my brother's. What followed was a huge series of dramatic events. My brother filled me in after everything settled down. She did cheat on him, but it was a drunken mistake, and she swore she used contraception. He decided to get a divorce for obvious reasons, but my Sil is still trying to win him back. When my brother cut off contact with her, she went on a rampage and started blowing up everyone else's phones, mine included. Other than begging for my brother, she keeps bringing up that she knows she's a garbage human being but insists her baby doesn't deserve to be laughed at. I tried to explain, but now I'm being labeled as racist. My brother says I should just apologize and move on, but I don't feel like it. Edit. It as in apologizing again, but I'm all for moving on. Am I the awe? Should I apologize? Edit 2. I forgot to add a crucial detail. I asked my parents first in front of their in-laws, and no one said anything until my father told me to just see my Sil without giving me any explanation. I thought my supposed niece was born with a disability or deformity, or that the delivery had been very difficult. That's why I tried to lighten the mood and expected my brother to be there. Sorry, LMAO. Looks like it's time for me to go to bed. Story 25. Am I the awe for not giving my dad's widow, affair partner any of his estate, and evicting her and my half-siblings from my childhood home? 5 years ago my 25F parents were still together when my father was caught having an affair with Jenna. Jenna confronted my mother and let her know that she was pregnant. My mother was devastated and chose to commit suicide. I was devastated, and I think that in some way my father was too. While I mostly blame him, the words Jenna said to my mother were cruel and I believe the main cause of her death. My father wanted to leave Jenna, but because she was pregnant married her instead. My culture is not kind to women who are unmarried with children. They went on to have a second child together. I hadn't spoken to my father these last 5 years, despite his many attempts. A large part of me has hated them both too much. My father died recently in a car accident on the way home from work. I found out that he hadn't updated his will and estate. Everything was left to me, as well as his life insurance. Jenna tried to fight me in the courts, but my lawyer brought up that she had an affair with my father who was married. The judge ruled with me and shamed Jenna. Adultery is not taken kindly here. This is why the judge gave her nothing. I had Jenna and her 2 children evicted from my childhood home. Jenna and her family have been raging at me. My father was a very wealthy man, and Jenna worked as a receptionist when they met. She now has no money to her name and lives with her mother. She thinks I did wrong by her and my half-siblings. I do not consider them my family, and I hate them because they will always be her children. Am I the awe? Everyone I know is so divided. Story 26. Am I the awe for needing physical space from my GF to balance work and life and avoid burnout? My GF, 24F, and I, 23M, have recently come into significant conflict because, among other reasons, her emotional needs require me to spend every moment I'm not in class or doing law school work, approximately 80 hours a week, physically together. My routine for the past few months, when she was a bit busier, was to sleep from 10:30 to 5:30 a.m. and begin work immediately, and work as much as I physically could so that I'd have 2 to 3 days completely free to spend doing absolutely no work and hang out with her. Her hours have been cut at work to about 12 to 16 a week, and she doesn't really have friends or a support network outside of me. So naturally, she has begun coming over nightly. I've tried to discuss how this contributes to my burnout by not allowing me time to work or to tend to myself or my apartment. The brief moments of alone time where I wasn't working on school were the ones I spent doing things I enjoy for myself, cleaning my apartment, doing laundry, etc. When I get home from campus at 7:30 p.m. and she's at my apartment a half hour later, I can't decompress. I also can't put myself in the headspace to focus on another hour or 2 of work if that's what's required of me. I also then get criticized for my messiness and how disheveled I seem, when I'm not afforded the time to get it in order. She's offered to clean my place, and while I appreciate that, that's not her job and it also doesn't address my burnout. I've tried to explain that I need extra physical space throughout my week to comfortably stay on schedule with my course load and take care of myself. All of these conversations end in her basically telling me that I'm forcing her to stare at her bedroom walls all day because the hours at her job are bad and she has no friends and that I don't recognize her efforts. And God forbid if I spend a night with my 2 guy friends to catch up. That is a whole other fight. But the fighting over needing space dominates my thoughts during the week, since she's always available to fight, and when I don't respond, she antagonizes and scolds me and makes it harder for me to do any work. So the burnout becomes two-pronged. When called out on this behavior, it is denied completely. Last night, she showed up without notice with dinner and an overnight bag. I appreciate dinner, but I was planning on sleeping at 9:30, and because I was entertaining her, we didn't sleep until 11:30. And then when my alarm went off, she kept me in bed wanting to whisper sweet nothings, fun, but I have work to do. And I fell back asleep and ended up being late to class on campus, about an hour drive from my apartment. Then, in the morning, I'm blamed for not planning well enough. Why did you only give yourself XYZ amount of time? And unless I want to start a fight 10 minutes before I have to go to class, the only response is, I know, I need to plan better. Sorry for being cranky in the morning. Saying, I did plan to give myself more time. I do not plan for 5 hours of interrupted sleep which leave me just as tired as when my head hit the pillow, would just cause problems. My burnout blamed on my use of ashwagandha and me treating my body like a trash can, and not being able to establish boundaries that I feel are healthy without it becoming a weeks-long war in which I inevitably lose, and will probably crash and burn in school because of. Would you say am I the awe? Story 27. Am I the awe for wanting to leaving my BF? Alright Reddit, I need y'all wisdom. Hand it to me straight. I, 20 female, have been with my boyfriend, 21 male, for going on 3 years. He's never had a stable job. Only does side work and refuses to work a regular 9 to 5. In his words, because it's a waste of time. We have been living at his grandmother's house for almost the whole relationship. May I remind you, this is 3 years of this. He's had a max of 6 different under-the-table construction jobs that didn't pay well. So he'd constantly quit. I on the other hand have had 5 jobs in the past 2 years of us being together. The first year we were together he insisted I don't work because a woman shouldn't have to do a man's job. Fast forward to a year later. There's no moolah, dollar, coming in. A girl gotta eat, ya feel me? So we can barely feed ourselves, and I said enough is enough. I got my first job at $12 an hour and it lasted for a while. The hours were dog dookie, but I still got by, you know? So I transferred to different jobs due to transportation issues and hour shortages. I finally found this vehicle recently, August 2024, and it was for $2,500. Not bad, but the vehicle runs and it's reliable. My man still had no way of helping, so I saved money and did payments on my vehicle till it was paid off in November. Thank God this person was willing to accept payments. But anywho, this man wanted his name on the title too. I firmly stood my ground and said no. I paid for it, so it's mine. He gets mad. Whatever. I recently had 2 jobs, one as a cashier at a dead-end fresh market and an under-the-table caregiver for an elderly woman with Alzheimer's. Now I've begged this guy to help me and get a job so he can move out of his grandmother's house and into our own. But he will not budge. We have 2 dogs and a cat. This isn't the issue, I love them dearly. But I pay for the food. I pay for animal meds, I pay for my mont's weed every week, mind you. And I don't get shit in return, it feels. My man has got a dog and wants to breed it, thinking he will make thousands off it and won't have to work. This dog hasn't been bred. There's no cash coming in. I am just spending all mine to feed his dog. It'd be an a-hole if I just let her starve. So back to the present. I lost my job at the market due to coworker issues. And I've been trying to save up since I got my vehicle to get a new house rental. I was doing great saving until I lost my job and I had no proof of a certain amount of income needed for the rental, so now I can't get the house. I again ask my boyfriend to help me and find a 9 to 5 or hell even shovel some driveways and charge $20 and do 10 driveways. There's 200 in one day. Hell, I might as well do it. Right? So I've asked outside opinions and people say he's useless. I should waste my time. I should leave. Now I must admit, I hate cleaning, hate ITTT, but I pitch in where I can to help Granny. So when I am working my nursing job from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. I got to work at the market from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. same day. Every day, I come home, I don't want to do shit. I don't feel like washing dishes, I don't feel like being a maid after doing a month's work for the day. And y'all know what this man tells me when I told him he could help if I am doing the month's job. He tells me cleaning is a woman's job. I said, boy, I am working 2 jobs, you can do some damn dishes. He says, well, if I get a job you just let the animals starve. He's been feeding and letting the dogs out daily, so I thought we're doing 50-50. I pay for everything, you be a housewife, ya feel me? Wrong. He won't waste his time with a dead-end 9 to 5 for a few months to help us move out his granny's house. Because I let the animals starve? What the F? I tell him, nah, we can get separate shifts, I do night shifts, you do day shifts. He says no, because I let the house go and the animals will starve and have to come home and clean. Reddit, I don't know WTH to think? AITAH for not wanting to support my man anymore? What do? I don't have the money to leave. I don't really want to. Sad face, help me kind humans. Update number 1. So yesterday I had to put the dog down I was talking about in my post that my boyfriend wanted to breed. It was heartbreaking, the poor girl had hip dysplasia and neuromuscular disease. I had a very nice woman reach out to help me get the dog help, and we ended up euthanizing her after the exam at the vet. Rip to her. This kind lady drove over 3 hours to come pick me and my BF up to help my dog, and she had mentioned that she could lose all of her help with fundraising and support if she were to help a breeder, and I had to explain to her personally, I am not a breeder, that is my boyfriend's doing. I told him, whatever you do with your dogs is your business, I don't want any part of it, and after I mentioned that when he wants to breed dogs it gets in the way of my future, he got upset. And what I mean by it getting in the way of my future is that I want to go to college, I want to travel the world, and I want to become a veterinarian, but with him wanting to breed dogs that gets in the way of me growing this because I'm stuck paying for it all. And after we got home, after we euthanized the dog, his brother had came over, who is 15, mind you. He had a mental breakdown, screaming that everyone obviously has problems that are non-existent and that he's the only one that has nobody to turn to, and that the one person who should be sticking in his corner basically told him he was a piece of shit, and he hasn't talked to me since yesterday morning. The night before yesterday morning he came in my room and started screaming at me because I told him it's his fault, he hasn't spent time with his dog before she needs to be put down, and he got upset with me because I had my dog out and he won't allow my dog around his because my dog had a history of fighting as a puppy. He is a rescue dog. My dog is a sweetheart, honestly I trust him with other animals, but my BF insists he's a monster and I just don't know it. I explained to him, all you had to do was ask me to put my dog up and you could have spent time with your dog, so it's your fault you didn't even bother to ask to put my dog up or do it yourself so you can spend time with her. And he got very pissed at me, telling me, oh, so why don't I just put a bullet in your dog's head in 5 days, then blame you, saying it's your fault you didn't spend time with him. And I basically told him he can get the fuck out of my room if he's gonna be talking to me that way, and he did. He took off for like 15 to 20 minutes on a walk and came back. He hasn't said a word to me since. I got ready for work today at 8 a.m. and left at 9 o'clock. I told him, I love you, I will see you later. We usually kiss and hug before any of us goes anywhere every single day, and today was the first day that I did not kiss him, and he did not go for a kiss with me. When I told him I love you, I didn't hear it back. I just walked out, so now I'm sitting at work with the old lady I take care of, trying to think of what to do next. I have a very sweet lady friend of mine down in Georgia that is willing to drive all the way across the country, which is 11 hours away from me, just to get me out of my situation. But I told her I need some time because I just got hired into a new job. My van is currently in a shop to be repaired, so I can start working and saving up money. Right now I don't know where I'm going, but I know it's somewhere, and I don't want to just automatically break up with this guy the day after his dog got put down right in front of him. This is the first time that me or him ever had to deal with a euthanasia of any animals, and I don't want to end up getting myself hurt if I try to leave him right now. So Reddit, what's your thoughts?